this is Rick from For Community, creating community spaces so you can connect with others and also with God. I'm excited about my wife and how she got her M2, her motorcycle license. So she and I have been riding around, just enjoying spending time together on the motorcycles. This is a dream come true for me because I really love riding my motorcycle. But sometimes during those days where I happen to be able to go for a longer motorcycle adventure, I am alone, and I find it really, really lonely. And here's the thing: I got some guy friends who also have motorcycles, but I can't think of a single one of my guy friends who has a motorcycle that I would like to ride with me to some kind of way off in the distance location and just kind of sit down and look at the water as it's rolling into the beach. You know, I don't want to do that with one of my guy friends. I want to do that with my wife. And so I'm excited because she's got her motorcycle license, and now we'll be able to go ride off in the sunset. And we've done that a couple times, ride off in the sunset and just kind of do whatever. It's so exciting. So I'm feeling pretty good about how things are moving forward. However, there is an uglier part of me that's coming out. I right now have my eye on pretty much everything that she's doing as she's learning to ride. I'm lane blocking so that nobody will put her at risk. And I'm also keeping my eye out for potential danger, which means that I'm looking at other drivers all the time. And here's where the uglier version of me is coming out. I'm beginning to judge all of the other drivers around me, even when I'm in my van. And most often when I'm driving, I'm in my van. I'm looking how other people are driving, and I'm watching them as they are potentially creating these risky scenarios by taking turns far too quickly, coming into oncoming lanes, not doing any kind of shoulder look, maybe driving too close. I'm all over the place, and I'm kind of getting really, really judgy, which is one reason why I really like this Bible passage that this video is based on. But before we get into that, how about you? For me, one of the things that I'm quick to judge is people who I think are driving really badly. And I'm thinking it's got to be something different for you. What's the one thing that you know catches your attention and makes you quick to judge someone? If you're brave enough to share what it is, and if you're watching with someone, please pause the video and talk about it. This video is based on my interpretation of James chapter 4, verses 11 through 12. In this text, we learn something about judging others. James chapter 4, verses 11 to 12. Don't speak evil against each other, dear brothers and sisters. If you criticize and judge each other, then you are criticizing and judging God's law. But your job is to obey the law, not to judge whether it applies to you. God alone, who gave the law, is the judge. He alone has the power to save or destroy. So what right do you have to judge your neighbor? Here's the point that I'm going to attempt to make in this video. Don't judge. Just that simple. But it's actually not that simple at all. I want to get something pretty clear first. I think that there are awesome reasons to actually judge people, but it's not the kind of judging that this text is addressing. If you're on the dating market, you 100% want to be a judge as you discern if someone has the capability of treating you well and has the potential to stick with you long term. You want to judge that. If you're a leader of a group and someone is doing something that's creating a toxic culture or otherwise hurting people, you want to be a good judge and dismiss that person from the group or clean up some behavior. Judging isn't always bad. As a matter of fact, judging is often a good idea because we're really talking about good discernment and protecting the people and the culture around you. The kind of judging in this passage, though, has nothing to do with good discernment. It actually has more to do about you than it does about the others that you're being critical of. This is the kind of judging where we don't see others as equal in terms of our personhood, in terms of our common and shared human condition, that we're all imperfect and that we all need grace. It is more to do with our lofty view of ourselves and the lack of effort we're giving into the application of just being a kind and good person. We turn a blind eye toward the areas where we're failing to live up to a rule, maybe, or where we fall and stumble, and maybe even totally dismiss the notion that something may apply more to us than to someone else. So let's get into this. The most obvious thing that's jumping out to me is the message of the gospel in this text. I know you don't see it, but the most obvious thing to me is the message of the gospel that needs to be underneath what this text is saying. The gospel includes the message that the law can't save us. Only Jesus can. No one, including me, is actually justified or seen to be good and right by, my ability to follow rules. And by that title, the law, we're really talking about all of the rules that we find in the Old Testament. And certainly we find a summary of that in the 10 Commandments. The idea here, and we've covered it a few videos ago, is that no one is good enough to be able to say that they are law keepers. None of us are perfect. So we're all the breakers of the law, because in order to get the benefit of the law and be recipients of the benefits the law can give us, we have to keep the whole thing. But we don't keep the whole thing, we're law breakers in terms of the standard of the Old Testament rules. So that's why the gospel is jumping out to me here. People are only seen to be right as they're declared righteous by faith. So essentially, we're all wrong. So essentially, it is fruitless to judge others as wrong according to some kind of moral or ethical code, as though, that makes us good and therefore God will judge us as right and we're good people. We're Jesus followers. The law doesn't make us right. Our faith in Jesus, if you're a Jesus follower, I'm a Jesus follower. This is what the Bible says. The law doesn't make us right. Our faith in Jesus is what makes us righteous. As Jesus followers, we've chosen to agree with the law as it calls us imperfect. And we agree that we need a plan for the bad that we've done, so we're not judged for it. So we've chosen to follow God's plan for us to be forgiven instead of being judged, which means we've chosen to follow Jesus. We've been forgiven and are just as guilty as anyone else who has been forgiven. The only difference is the forgiveness and the promise that Jesus now gives us. The one who gave the law, which is God, is choosing not to exercise his right to condemn us with it. Rather, he's choosing to be patient to see who will accept his path of being forgiven, instead of accepting their fate in being judged. So here's the big idea here. The idea about who has the right to decide what to do about the law, doesn't land with you, doesn't land with me, it lands with God. And God has decided that he's not going to use the law to condemn us. Instead, he's going to offer us forgiveness through faith in Jesus. We are not on equal terms with the lawgiver. We're beneath that level. We're all on equal terms with each other as people who are in a one-down relationship with the lawgiver and are all required to apply the law to ourselves. So it's fruitless, absolutely meaningless, to judge people by some kind of moral code, like the law, in such a way that puts us in the position of judge, rather than one that's under the law as one that's been demanded to follow it. We're not the yielders and dispensers of the law. We are the receivers of it, required to follow it. So it's meaningless because no one's justified by the moral code or ceremonial purity. No one. So if no one is justified as a good person because of the way they live, including you, including me, why in the world we choose to judge others as though anyone at all had any small ability to be able to fulfill the law and ultimately be seen as right and good by it? Basically, if you're judging somebody else as doing something bad, you basically said that they're better than you because they have a better capacity than you do to actually live in a right way according to the law, when you, in fact, do not have that capacity, and neither do I. The law just makes us aware that there's a problem. That's what the law does. It just makes us aware that we're imperfect. So when we judge others by some kind of moral standard, like particularly God's law, in the Old Testament. The text is reminding us that judgment according to moral ethical standard doesn't work because none of us are perfect. We're all equals. We can be justified only by our faith in Jesus, and we all are in need of forgiveness. So I think the application of here is something around treating others as though they are equal to ourselves. We are all equally good and equally bad at the same time. We all, at the same time, smell like both farts and roses. When we get caught up in the wrong things that others are doing, we tend to disassociate. We tend to only think of the parts of us that smell like roses, while we conveniently get overtaken by amnesia about the parts of us that smell like farts. With us, it's not one without the other. We're all equally good and equally bad at the same time. We are a bit of a mess. Okay, let me try to land this. Is judging others always bad? Absolutely not. Judging others is essential to our safety, our well-being, us trying to do better in life, making sure that we're attached to the right kind of people who won't bring us down and will help to lift us up. Judging is essential to keep our families healthy, to keep our work culture healthy, our friend culture healthy. Judging is essential. It's healthy. It's good to do. Part of judgment is simply exercising good discernment. It can be protective and loving to exercise good judgment. I mean, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. All judgment is not bad. Sometimes I even welcome people's criticism and judgment of me when I'm in the context where we're all working together, trying to grow together, like in school or in for community. However, that's not the kind of judgment that this passage is talking about. The kind of judgment that this passage is talking about is what we do to others when we carry this expectation of them that they should be able to perfectly follow all of the rules so that you never have to have an inconvenient experience of them. That's not a good use of judgment. In that case, we got upside down. Those are the moments we have to remember that we're all in need of grace. None of us are on a higher footing. So I got to tell you what this passage did for me this week. At the beginning of this week, I was so mindful, so aware of the bad drivers all around me. I'd be pointing out, I'd say, look at that person driving through the crosswalk without stopping for those people. That woman needs a ticket because it's illegal under traffic law. I'd be pointing out, say, look at that person. They took that left so fast that they've entered into oncoming traffic, and now they're putting everybody at risk. And then I read this passage on Monday, and I did my own thinking around it, did my own devotion around it, and man, my week has been much more peaceful as I've turned off my judgy eyes, and I just focus on what I've got to do to be safe and kind and smart out there in the wild of my own community. I don't have to hold other people to the high standard that even I can't live up to. And it gave me much more peace to stop looking at other people and to just be mindful about what I bring to the table and how I need to live my own life. Okay, what about you? Imagine what it would be like for you to simply stop getting stressed out about that thing that frustrates you so much about others' behavior. Imagine if you could just let that go and get on with your life. Well, you can. Just let that go and get on with your life by remembering that. You're not that kind of a judge. We are all equally receivers of the law and not dispensers of it. None of us are seated as a dispenser of the law. We're all obligated to do the very best we can. And then at the end of the day, acknowledge that we simply are not rule followers. We're all rule breakers who need forgiveness that Jesus has for all of us. Well, that's it from me to you for now. Would you please like? Would you please share? Would you please subscribe? Would you please ask for the link? We meet 2 times on Sundays, once at 10:30 a.m., once at 6 o'clock p.m., 6 o'clock p.m. just for guys, for community, creating community spaces so you can connect with others and also with God. See you next time.